Hi, I'm Meg Crane. And how are you guys doing tonight? Good, good. And how do I look like I'm doing?
We're good.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm going to call you all liars, though, because by 9 a.m. every day, I have at least one person tell me I look exhausted and need a nap. And I'm actually really not okay. And sometimes I kind of appreciate when I don't look okay, because then people are a little more understanding of the accommodations that I need. And one accommodation I need in order to be able to be up here tonight is that I don't have to read. I don't have to do a reading because I can't read, which is both hilarious and tragic because I am a writer. I have been a writer since I was tiny, since I learned how to read. I wrote all through grade school as much as I could. I majored in rhetoric and communications in university, and in college I majored in journalism. And I was living in Winnipeg, Canada when I started my career, and it was going great. I had broken a few national stories. I was able to get interviews with people who didn't trust the media and wouldn't do interviews with others. And I was really loving my life. And then I met someone down here. I came for a visit. I was driving back home and my car slipped on some ice. Going 60 miles an hour, I smashed into the cement barrier and my car spun into the ditch. And I was actually fine. I got out of the car, I stood up, some truckers stopped, and they asked if I needed an ambulance. No, I'm fine. Highway patrol came and he asked, did you hit your head? Nope. Okay, then you're fine. But later that day, I sat down to work on an article that was due a few days later, and the screen was blurry. And I just couldn't write, and I thought, I just had a really bad car accident. I'm just upset. I need a day to calm down. But the next day, on top of the blurriness, I was getting this really bad headache. And then the next day is when I really started to worry, because not only were the words blurry, but the letters were jumping around and I couldn't read at all. And I was getting dizzy and I was having trouble walking. And my now mother-in-law took me to multiple doctors, and they said, oh, well, you might have a mild concussion, but that's okay. Just rest for a week or two, don't do anything, and you'll be fine. And then I got back to Canada, and they said, yeah, you've got a mild concussion, but just sit in a dark room in the quiet for a couple weeks, and you're going to be fine. And then, a few months later, I wasn't fine. I was actually getting worse, and it wasn't until about a year in and 2 more head injuries that I found out that you're actually not supposed to just sit in a dark room and rest. There are a lot of ways that you can actively heal from a head injury. So at the 1 year point, I started doing speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. I was getting neurobiofeedback treatments, taking tons of supplements, and getting steroid injections into my neck and spine. So it's pretty frustrating because there's all this misinformation about head injuries, and you walk around and you look fine, and the doctors think, yeah, you're fine, but you're not. And if I had gotten all of this help 2 years ago when the accident first happened, I would have healed a lot quicker, and I might be up here right now reading something to you that I wrote. But as of right now, I still can't write. But the good news is that I am doing well enough that I can stand up here in front of all of you, despite these lights in my face. I can speak in coherent sentences, and I don't think I've had to search for like a single word since I got up here, which is really great. So I'm pretty hopeful that maybe in the next few years, if Chelsea keeps doing this, I might be able to write something and come up here and read it for all of you. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Trisha, and I just want to thank everybody who organized this event. Chelsea, Carroll College, thanks so much for having this. These are 2 pieces of short fiction. The Keeper of Secrets. I hoard my secrets. I keep them stacked in closets. I roll them out in carts and I push them down the mountain paths, peddling the little ones, but guarding the big ones as insurance. Scrolls of them line red lacquered boxes, my safety deposit. I folded entire life stories into origami owls that hang menacingly around my windowsill. Those are the best kept secrets, the ones hidden in plain sight. I keep those secrets, waiting for the right person and the right moment to pass them along. There's power in that. It's an erotic exchange. I have information you need. What are you willing to give me in return? Did you know your stories are authentic currency? Sit down. Let me put the kettle on. Just for today, let's not let the lies we tell ourselves substitute for real intimacy. Just for today, we won't hold back. Just for today, I'll let you put your hand to my belly and feel the kicks of the secrets that were left unsaid. Secret 1, cherry stains. The woman pulled over to the side of the road, rolled down the window, and said through the rain, "You should have never left home tonight." Listen, I pulled my raincoat back and revealed my face. I need a ride. I've got, fumbling in my pocket, $21 in this maraschino lip gloss, but it's all yours if you can get me out of here. She tilted her face toward the open window. I could see only her one blue eye. She lit an old gold and blew a phantom smoke ring in my direction. "My name's Dorothy. Get in, kid." I smiled and looked over my shoulder as I climbed into the '66 Oldsmobile. Dorothy put the car on the road nice and slow. "Did you have a destination in mind, kid?" she asked. "I'm open to suggestions," I said. As the Olds picked up speed, I thought, "So long, Jack." It felt like a sweet dream. Looking in the rearview mirror, I applied some more lip gloss to my swollen lip. He'd smacked me across the mouth for the last time. "You're better off without him," she said, untying the white scarf from around her head and releasing her platinum hair. She handed me the scarf, stained cherry in the corner. "You left this in my husband's car, sweetie." Thanks.
All right, so I have two pieces. One, I'm sort of violating a rule. I've never enjoyed the poems that people write on the back of the bar napkins at the end of the readings, but I'm doing something of a version of that. This is hot off the presses, so it's a little weak, but we'll see. And then I have a poem that is older and maybe a little more reliable. Anyway, all right, so I've been interested in rhizomes. Rhizomes. American culture on the surface seems homogeneous, like mass-produced milk, white, bland, and unevenly enriched. We kill microbes we don't understand and add in minerals and other things we feel better about in their place. We define, we organize, we speak of scalability and replicability to increase our outputs of same. It's true that the exurbs look nearly the same coast to coast, populated as they are by branded chains. Starbucks next to Fatburger, catty corner from Walgreens, the same in Florida as in Washington, from San Diego to Bangor, from sea to shining sea. But as much as we crave sameness and order, our nature is heterogeneous, rhizomatic. We are creeping bellflowers. Everybody seen the bellflower? Okay. Our roots spread and connect to things and people, and we can't explain why we connected. We say, because it was there. We're each a long emissary of the mother root, grabbing one another in fibrous chains and spreading all over. Campanula rapunculoids, somebody can correct me on the pronunciation later, caught a boat from Europe and regenerates by seed and by root. It's beautiful and demands everything. Some states classify it as noxious. With the bellflower, you can pull off any individual bell stalk, and the top of the root releases easily. That stalk will die, and another springs up on the same chain. The real action takes place under the surface, in the soil we don't honor or acknowledge. My mother sold our family home after 36 years. Strangers live there, and I unexpectedly feel grief. I drove by the house recently. The man who bought it slumped on the top steps, wearing a white t-shirt, elbows on thighs, forearms at sharp angles, and ending in fists under his chin. The mower waited along a half-chewed strip in the side yard. The man looked like my father did 36 years ago after he got off work and mowed the lawn. He was handsome like my father, and exhausted like him too. We moved into the house in '76, my mother never having seen it, having packed up a house and 4 kids by herself to come back to her hometown while my father came ahead and found work. My sister, brother, and I walked the 4 blocks to school. So many connections. My children went to the same elementary school, and so did their cousins. My 6th grade teacher had a daughter. She taught my daughter. That daughter taught my son. That daughter had a daughter who taught my son. I went to the same eye doctor my grandparents did. I went to the same pediatrician my mother did. Our roots support and overlap one another. Pull away one connection and others pop up. The man on my mother's porch is exhausted for a reason. After 36 years of my parents' benign neglect and 75 years of existence before that, there's a lot to do to make it their home. They tore the wooden paneling and plaster and lath underneath, tore out the bathroom fixtures. Hard work, that. They sanded the wood floors, doors, and wood frames. Then they'll sheetrock and insulate the walls, clean everything up, and put furniture in. Then they'll do it again in every other room in the house. They will erase our footprints and make their own. They'll create their own home. The only thing that will remain the same is the orientation of the view. The view itself will change too, because things are always changing. Neighbors painting houses, tearing out trees, planting new ones. The things that keep middle-class people busy for several successive spring and summer weekends. Mom worries they'll tear out the built-in buffet with the leaded glass cabinet doors. The day I first saw that, I didn't know the word craftsman, but I knew my mom finally had a place to put her holiday china and silver. Mom got those at her wedding reception, held in the house she lived in with her parents just north of town where they moved in 1947. Before a man named Childs formed that ranch and set cows wandering in the northwest shadow of Mount Helena, which is now pockmarked by individual sewer and drainage systems, it belonged to the people of the plains, the Blackfeet, the Crow, the Grovon, the Assiniboine. Before that, there were other tribes, Salish and Anishinaabe, who got pushed out by the people who got pushed out from the people who pushed them out from the east. Illness and injury pulled my parents from that, or my grandparents from the place, and the acreage that went with it in 1972. They couldn't sell the ranch to a single buyer, so they sold it piecemeal. People bought it and built their own American dreams on their 5, 10, or 20 acres. The ranch houses and the barns remain, but the rest is unrecognizable. An aerial map of the area shows a crazy quilt of different sized and shaped tracks, stitched together with roads that followed the immediate needs of those who built them in consultation with no one else. Now homes of all description hunker on that dry land soil, and in an ironic twist, occasionally an owner is uprooted from the bank. Mom found a cozy little condo not far from the place. It's the first house she chose for herself. Just before my mom listed the house, I walked through and listened to the old acrimonies and heartbreaks. I stood in the spots in which hard things were said. I heard the distinct shuffle of each member of my family's footfalls, the sound of my father's footsteps coming up the stairs to wake us every morning, and the echo of his wedding ring when he knocked on the solid wood door sounded the loudest. I can't retreat there. I can't show my children where I was the time that their uncle and aunt and I remember the smell of each part of it, the feel and look of each room. I know how easily dust remains behind the old radiators. I know where my cats are buried. But we've been pulled from that house like a stalk of purple bells. Other stalks collapsed too. The elementary school my children and I attended was torn down, and a new school is coming up in its place. People buy the houses, fix them up. It's a matter of time before the red brick apartments go, and the semi-homeless who live there will be pulled up and go passively, while the deep roots from which we spring grow and reach blindly and connect with the first rock or brick or other carbon-based bit of matter we find until we find one like us, double ourselves, and then keep going. That's that. Thank you. And finally, a poem. Okay, so all of this burning. Farmers char fields to clear space and food for blind sprouts cracking through earth. New can't reach the light without the old receding. Burning slash erases old bones. If it be false, let it burn. If it's bald and puling and worn, let its cinders bless the earth around me. Feed limbed pith in the wild iris and rose. Unthinned ponderosas ignite, each a match head, passing salvation to the next. Pine cones demand heat to explode seeds of what comes next, and nourish them on the cadavers of what was. Burst me open then, let flame sort me out.
I am Gemma Z. Hazen, civil servant, librarian, Bible Belt transplant, registered independent, mother of 2, endometriosis and hysterectomy survivor, excellent husband and devoted wife. And I have been out of practice writing and reading for a really long time. I'm trying to get back into it. So when Chelsea said, "You should read," I said, "Okay, if I promise you I will, then I will." And I am. I will read for you tonight a piece written for this event entitled Smart Girl. In kindergarten, the teacher asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said, "I want to know everything." They laughed. "Nobody can know everything, that's silly. Maybe you should be a teacher." They put me in the corner for kids who could already read. It was the 80s, so kindergarten was still about finger painting and standing in line with your pants properly applied, and they ignored me. Peerless and alone, I developed an unselfconscious delight in my own mind, the pleasure of learning for its own sake, the joy of discovery. This inner life is the part that no one can take away. What I didn't learn was social skills. The principal's daughter sat next to me in 3rd grade and privately informed me after her book report recitation. That was pretty bad. I'm not great at writing. Yet there were some sections that lacked cohesion, I replied. The complex furrowing of her brow alerted me to an error, but I was unsure of how to remedy my mistake or precisely what it was. The popular girls tortured me until I moved away at the end of 5th grade. They destroyed both my model of Jupiter's Galilean moons and my self-esteem. Mutual huddling in the library to avoid middle school bullies during recess had forced me to bond with a closeted gay boy who also liked reading the dictionary. He was the spelling bee champion. Feeling understood at last, I got up the courage to ask him the current question plaguing my everyday thoughts. What if we don't really exist and are just figments in the imagination of some more important thing, like a god or something? What, like God's dream? That's total nonsense. What sort of freak thinks of crap like that? Lesson learned. Keep the big ideas to yourself. Here's how it feels to be me. I have never been bored. That thing that is the most interesting thing in the world to you, everything feels like that to me. I learn several new somethings every day, and every new thing fits perfectly with all the other things. I see that new thing and I think, it all makes more sense now that you're here. They tell me I'm a systems thinker. I want to look under every rock, in every hole, and have them reveal their secrets to me. I see the big problems out in the world, and I think, I can solve those problems, let me at them. Talk smaller, the sheriff's daughter and cheerleading captain implored me, her English tutor. I don't understand what any of those words mean, and I'm going to fail this class if you don't help me, and I'll get kicked off the squad. I didn't know how to say it any smaller. I never have. Instead, I wrote the essay for her, congratulating myself on approximating her idiosyncrasies, her phrasing, and earning her a C. I was allowed to sit at her lunch table, our English teacher none the wiser. In college, I discovered that smart boys generally liked that I was smart, but only if I was sure to never accentuate those areas where I was smarter. I shone in the supporting role, making the world safe for mediocre white boys everywhere. Smart girlfriend/wife does tricks. She waxes eloquent about economics, quips about postmodernists, and sets up the punchline of your favorite joke. As soon as smart girl/wife decided that she wanted to be the protagonist of her own story, or should maybe get some credit in her own right, things tended to go south. Professionally, I am told that my ideas are great, in theory, but impractical because they're just too much at once. I work in state government. Being right is less important than working together. This is almost an improvement over the refrain that my intelligence is freakish, or that I should hide it or allow others to exploit it for their own ends, but it's only a slightly more sophisticated way of saying, honey, hide your light under a bushel. Don't be proud of what makes you exceptional. Other people's comfort is more important than your fully realized potential. Imagine beginning every day by stuffing your splendor into serving sizes that other people can swallow. Imagine you're playing with blocks and someone turns to you at 5 and says, honey, make sure you only build mediocre towers. The world can't handle your best towers, but you build them anyway. You're supposed to believe that this is courageous and you're an intrepid pioneer, a maverick, a rebel. But how long do you build before you realize that they're never going to let you be the architect? I'm tired. My inner life is supposed to be enough for me. But do you allow yours to be enough for you? I bet you don't. And neither will I.
I've tried to sit these out for the last couple of sessions, and this time I'm deciding to not read you something, but tell you what I think is my greatest accomplishment since buying Montana Book Company, which is my new endeavor. Thank you. I feel really honored to build a community space and invite people in, particularly at-risk youth, where I hope that they can find home and words about their experience like I wasn't able to find as a teenager, but went searching and never found. Many of you know I grew up with 2 moms, and in the 80s, people were really scared about the LGBTQ community or gay and lesbians circa 1980. And I searched and searched libraries and books trying to find stories that represented my own experience. And that is my aim here, is to create a space where others can find their own experience and reflect upon it, especially young people. I had, in my 2nd month of owning the store, an encounter that I think is my greatest accomplishment thus far. I had all the staff on duty because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was kind of wandering back and forth in the store when this big guy with an army hat, and he was like wearing a sleeveless t-shirt, pretty stocky, came in, and he said, "Oh, I love books. Just smell it up, I can't wait." He was so emphatic about this bookstore. So he's walking through and he's picking up books and he's got this little stack, and I'm doing other things towards the front of the store, like trying to deal with anxiety, like sort the brochures, where do they go? Ridiculous things. And then all of a sudden, this stack of books is gone, and this man is like beelining for the front door. And I'm at the front door, so I say, "Oh, what? Hey, what happened? You know, I thought you loved bookstores. You found some books. I don't know where they went. What happened?" And his wife's walking behind him too, and kind of pursed lips. He's like, "Oh, this place is just too liberal. Just too liberal. It's ridiculous." And sometimes I just kind of often I turn from conflict. I'm not well adept at conflict. I often shut down and just kind of go, "Ah." But something kicked in. And he tried to leave. He was backing out of the store with his wife behind him. And I said, wait. And by the way, that day I might have been wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Empathetically, though, it had all the names of people who had been killed by a police officer in the letters. And I think is an important shirt. And I think that he was turned off by the shirt as well as the content in the store. Somehow I managed to get him over the threshold. And he was bombastic and loud and let everybody know in the store how he thought. And it was pretty crowded. And my high school age employees, who don't get a whole lot of money to deal with this kind of stuff, had their noses down and like, oh my gosh, there's conflict. So we brought him in, managed to get him in, and I said, look, are you upset because of this? And he said, oh yeah, that's ridiculous. We should have, support our service members and support our civil servants. And I said, hey, just because I'm wearing this doesn't mean I don't support civil servants and policemen and firemen and all the people who make our society better and safe. It's not in opposition to what you think. In fact, I believe those things too. And he went on and on about a variety of things. And eventually, we managed to walk back in, and I pointed out and I said, if we keep going at this from totally opposite positions and don't take time to actually sit and talk it through instead of like yelling or stepping away from one another, that will be the demise of our democracy. That we both want things in our nation, and that's gonna be a problem, this conflict. We have bought into politics so hard that we have forgotten that we can share a meal with somebody who doesn't think like us. And that is not to discount the gravity of the things that we're facing at all, especially marginalized people. But I said about his army hat, I said, look, we support veterans. I love to support veterans in whatever way I can. My partner served in the National Guard. She was the second woman in her unit here in Helena, Montana. I have a soft heart for the stories of veterans. And I was like, okay, all right. And so I went and I brought him a Sebastian Junger book. I don't know if you know of him, but he was the documentarian who went to Afghanistan and directed Restrepo and fought with these boys and men on this really steep hillside and watched soldiers die right next to him while he was filming. It's an incredible documentary, go watch it. And I said, here's a book about how important tribe is, and when veterans come back home, they don't feel a sense of tribe, and that's something that we lack and we don't provide in our communities in general as tribe. So we took it, and I said, okay, well, him and Linda, I know his name, Bob and Linda, but since we're on public television, I'll be pretty good. But he came back in, and this wasn't my goal, but he bought 5 books. He picked up his stack again, and I brought him to tears with the conversation about the veterans, because he was also a veteran. And when he left, I shook his hand, I hugged his wife, and I know their names, and if they ever come back in, I'll be able to say hello and say, I know your story. And that was my greatest accomplishment. Also, he gave me a 3-star review on Facebook. And said he would never come back, but that it was a good conversation with Chelsea. So that's my biggest accomplishment after getting the bookstore. Thank you.
All right. I'm Brianna Boudon. I went to Carroll. I've been to almost all of these. This is my first time reading, so. Unpopular opinion. My ex-boyfriend is one of the best feminists I know. Now, if you know my ex-boyfriend, you know that he's a gun lover with 3 guns, one of which he actually made himself, and he's very proud of because it doesn't have an actual serial number or anything like that. So, he's conservative and votes Republican. He's white, cisgender, straight, and hates being politically correct, which is funny because he's also a debater, and in the debate circuit, PC is kind of the MO.
He didn't even identify as a feminist until he was a sophomore in college. And before then, he actively expressed his disdain for feminism as a movement. And honestly, I don't blame him. The type of feminism he was introduced to through the debate circuit and very liberal areas of his life, it was a brand. One feminism to rule them all, one way to think about things, one way to feel about things. His disdain for that feminism, a brand that was copyrighted by middle to upper class, educated white women, that all made him a better feminist. Feminism, in my opinion, has become an echo chamber, the same ideas and concepts being blindly supported and repeated. And those ideas and concepts aren't inherently bad. I believe a lot of them. But without analyzing and questioning them, you produce a list of rules you must follow to be a true feminist, instead of a discourse of how we can better ourselves. Discourse challenges us to be more inclusive, to better the environment so it's less constrictive and oppressive. Discourse challenges our thinking so we ourselves don't become those closed-minded oppressors that we're fighting against. My ex challenged me. He made me express and defend my views in such detail that I considered sides to my opinions that I had never considered before. He strengthened my views and began to understand his own. Through our discussions, he discovered he was, in fact, a feminist, an egalitarian feminist, to be exact. He began to embrace the label, to challenge those who prescribe to the feminism brand, the brand where a straight, white, cis man cannot challenge a viewpoint or an idea without being reminded of his privilege in a way to shut down the conversation. Privilege exists, sexism exists, mansplaining exists, but their existence should not be used to take away the voices of men, or anyone. Feminism should be about discourse and the sharing of views, not silencing other viewpoints. My ex had his voice silenced by feminism the brand, but true feminism is about letting everyone's voice be heard. The growth that my ex has gone through has made me so proud. He practices feminism his own way. He deeply and thoroughly explores feminism and equality and intersectionalism. He questions and seeks opinions of others, especially those he knows thinks differently. He has Linda Alcoff's The Problem with Speaking for Others open in his phone browser at all times. He loves that piece. It's the piece that makes him feel that he has a voice when others try to silence him with accusations of privilege and ignorance. He acknowledges he has privilege. It makes him uncomfortable to acknowledge it, and he doesn't quite get the true impact of his privilege, but he's aware he has it. He tries so hard not to be ignorant. He tries so hard to understand. He questions to learn, to understand your viewpoint as best he can. Now, often it comes off as argumentative, like he's trying to tear down your opinion, prove you wrong. I blame debate. But in actuality, he just wants to understand, to grow. It's easy to get frustrated and use his privilege to end the discussion. But I've learned to be patient, and it's made me a stronger advocate for my beliefs and views. My ex has made me a better feminist, no doubt in my mind. He's passionate, driven, curious, and critical, and he's fallen in love with feminism. What an amazing combination that is. Because while many will get stuck in one way of thinking about and practicing feminism, he'll continue to grow as a feminist and challenge others to do the same. He's the feminist I aspire to be. Here's another unpopular opinion for you all. You are wrong. Well, not wrong per se, but you're not right. Challenge yourself. Challenge your thinking. Start talking about real issues with real people who don't agree with you. Get out of the echo chamber that you've gotten comfortable in. Acknowledge other ways of thinking. Be okay with changing your opinion. Don't be stubborn. Accept that sometimes you aren't right. As someone who always likes to be right, I know it's difficult. And I may not have said it outright to him, but my ex-boyfriend showed me that I was not right on a lot of things. And though I hate him for that, I love that privileged, white, cisgendered, straight, male feminist, and I'm grateful for the challenges he gave me. And I hope you all get to experience the frustration, annoyance, growth, and love that I did.
My name is Trish. I am a lawyer. I'm not a real writer. but I thank Chelsea for the opportunity for everyone to come out and practice telling our own stories. I tell other people's stories professionally. In fact, that's how my grandma describes my job. She says, Trish, do you still have that job where you make up stories? I say, Grandma, they're not made up, they're true. This is the point. So thank you, Chelsea. When my daughter was 2 years old, she saw me applying mascara. I want to be pretty, she said, pointing up at the wand. I said, oh, here, tickling her nose with a soft powder brush. You can can have this one. No, she said. I want to be pretty. You're already pretty, I said. And she stomped her little feet, which were, of course, adorable and perfect, exactly like the rest of her, and she said, no, I'm not. Well, I was not having that. Right that second, I threw away every piece of makeup I owned, which was not much. I think I had one concealer, some powder, the mascara, and probably one shade of eyeshadow that I literally had no idea what to do with. It all went right in the trash. I've never had a perfect complexion, and I've had varying degrees of reliance on concealer over my lifetime. At that time, I was 21 and still coming down off the hormones of pregnancy and lactation, so my relationship at that point was at a pretty high level. But even that went in the trash, and I did not buy another cosmetic product for a year and a half. This was clearly not that much of a sacrifice. The most sophisticated I ever got with cosmetics was the distinction of being the only one of my cousins who was allowed to play with my grandma's makeup. The rest of them used it as face paint. My mother always wore the same shade of bright pink, which bore no relationship whatsoever to her actual skin tone and was in no way complimentary. At some point in my early 30s, after I'd had 2 children, been married for several years, successfully established a professional career, my grandma offered to take me shopping for makeup, muttering begrudgingly to my sister and I, well, you girls have to dress up sometime. I told her I seemed to be managing. I've always said that I would start wearing makeup more often whenever men did. We're getting closer to that point, and I begrudge nobody a little bit of under-eye cover-up. Thank you, Jonathan Van Ness. But we're not quite there yet. My daughter, meanwhile, grew up, and I gradually reintroduced such wildly trendy products as tinted moisturizer to my routine. We did our nails together. She discovered YouTube and all of the tutorials and haul videos and reviews and unboxings that you can find there. But she also discovered radical feminism. Some days she would ask me to buy her a highlighter palette. Other days she would ask me to buy her a pencil pouch that said, less bullshit, more feminism. I wasn't sure if that would be approved for school, but I also wasn't sure that I cared. She gained a reputation around her middle school as the girl who would quash any misogynist bro unfortunate enough to cross her path. Around this time, as she was discovering both beauty products and patriarchal bullshit, I told her the story of how she stomped her tiny little feet and said that she wasn't pretty without my mascara, and how I decided to take the radical step of just going around with my normal face for like a year and a half. Oh, she said, and she teared up a little. You did that for me? Well, of course I did, I said. I was a little taken aback at how touched she was. And she's older now, a proper teenager, but not much has changed. She asks me to buy her things like a keychain that says girls doing whatever the fuck they want in 2018. Thank you. We send each other memes about mansplaining. She also regularly asks me to drive her to Ulta to buy birthday presents for her friends, and she stalks the mailbox waiting for her next subscription box to arrive. It turns out that over the last couple of years, she forgot the story about the time I threw away my makeup, so I told it to her again. You really did that? She said. Of course I did, thinking about how touched she was last time. I was a 2-year-old. I didn't know what I was doing, she said. Maybe she didn't know what she was doing when she was 2 years old. Maybe I didn't know what I was doing. I definitely have no idea what I'm doing right now. And so maybe she had to learn from YouTube how to apply eyeliner. But what I want her to learn from me is this. We are all beautiful just the way we are. And whatever our imperfections, we have nothing to hide.
Thank you. My name is Hailie. I go to Carroll College. I'm a normal girl. I write. So, for about a year and a half now, I've been writing some kind of very, very short poems that I'd like to share with you, and maybe we can find meaning in that at the very end. So, here's the first one. I'm going to explain all these. I'm going to break the rules that an artist sets for themselves. Like, I don't trust you guys to figure it out, so I'm just going to explain it. This first one is about a man named James Johnson, which is what I call Jimmy Johns. And I wrote this poem about Jimmy Johns because one of my friends, who will not be named, who will speak at this event, really likes Jimmy Johns. So, so without further ado, here's this poem about Jimmy Johns that I wrote. Jimmy John, the sandwich, Don. In Jimmy's game, we're all the same. So this next poem's about my friend Luke. This next poem is about my friend Luke, who isn't here, and I didn't ask him if it was okay to say this poem. That's fine, okay? He went to Carroll and graduated sometime. I don't know how anonymous this is ever gonna be, but Luke is his middle name. His first name starts with a B, so B, Luke, and then his last name, but we all call him Luke because that's what he goes by. But Carroll College disagreed with that. They didn't think that his name was Luke. They thought that his name was just the letter, just the letter B. B, and then his last name. His first name isn't B, it's like a proper real name that starts with B, but they thought his name was just B. Luke. So I wrote this poem to protest Carroll's continued treatment of him. So here's this poem. To be Luke, or not to be Luke. Be Luke every time. A Carroll College rhyme. This next one's one of my more serious works. I wrote this very recently. It's beautiful. Well, no, it's not. It's so windy this weekend. Oh my God. But it was beautiful like a week ago when the leaves were all crunchy. I love that. So here's a poem about that. Trees think in spring, each leaf a thought, and when trees sleep, the leaves must drop. And that's it. It's a feel-good one, yeah. You guys didn't think I had range? Yeah, I'm funny and I deep. So, okay, what am I doing? These poems, as you may have noticed, are bad. They're short. Their meter doesn't make any sense. They don't speak to any greater sympathies or to any part of the human condition. And you may have missed this before in the excitement, but I rhymed the words rhyme and time. That's like the first rhyme that you learn, if you can remember back that far. But here's the thing about these poems. I like them. I like them a lot. Why? Because I kind of like challenging myself to describe something ordinary in my life in sort of a silly way. And it kind of serves as a sort of mindful refocusing when I'm maybe frustrated. And to demonstrate that further, here's a poem about being frustrated in debate. I am a debater. This is the most that debate has ever been mentioned at this event. As in, it's been mentioned twice instead of 0 times, so interesting. But anyway, here's my poem about debate. Gel pen lines, strokes so fine, words so rough, lines weren't enough. Kind of a sad one. Sometimes I do well in debate, though. I don't want you to think that I'm bad at debate. I'm good at debate. And unfortunately, I'm not really a good enough poet to explain why I like writing these things so much. As the great philosopher Natalie Wynn once said, art is the expression of an inner truth. And sometimes I think about how so much art that we have from history, from the Renaissance, for example, was made or commissioned by rich people who had a lot of money or time on their hands. And I don't have money or time. I got kind of cheated in that respect, but the thing about these poems is that they're so short, and though they are so bad, I feel kind of sneaky and resourceful when I can crank out one of these little guys. Because it's like I'm snatching my identity, my truth, from the jaws of stress and busy work, and I don't know, capitalism in general. So, one last poem for you all. Please write poems. They are fulfilling. No one has to know them, and the act of creation in itself is thrilling.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm the inspiration for the Jimmy Jones poem. Which I had to take credit for because I'm mad that she went before me and it's going to be a mood shift, sorry. I'm a pinch hitter tonight. I'm a regular. I wrote this like a year ago and I was too chicken shit to do anything with it, so here it is now. Okay. The first summer. After I graduated high school, I had a lot of time to get drunk. My mom and younger brother had moved back down to Arizona, and my dad traveled with the high school baseball team he coached when he wasn't working nights. I wouldn't let myself be alone, because if I did, time seemed to shrink. I hadn't sent out the thank you cards to the people who sent me graduation gifts. I've never sent a thank you card in my life. I wasn't earning enough money to buy my books for the first semester because I worked 3 hours a day at my best friend's mom's deli. And I didn't want to leave the first place I'd ever been popular because I was nominated for prom queen my senior year and I took it very personally. High school was really simple. Okay. I went to parties for the first time and hosted bonfires in the yards of grass between the barn and the back field. Nights didn't start until after 10 and smoking made me anxious and shots made me sick, but I was determined to continue changing. I felt like a character in a science fiction novel who has lost control of his time machine and drifts forward without an anchor. When I wandered into empty corners of houses I'd never been to before, I wanted my hallucinations to be of Massey. My senior English teacher had good hair and a better beard and snapping eyes and a smirk like a late-night host. He never gave me the highest possible grade on practice time writes, even though I insisted I was the best writer in the class. Once he wrote a 9, which is the highest score, scribbled it out, and replaced it with an 8. I was smitten. He called me out for not trying hard enough, and I bragged openly about not having read the books and still forming coherent analysis. "This is so you," he wrote once at the top of the paper on Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, which I hated. "You probably didn't even read the book, and yet you waxed philosophical for 4 pages. That was the only time he ever truly got fed up with me, and he gave me a C on the paper. I chose him as an advisor for an independent studies project, creative writing, because I was too lazy to research anything, because I wanted to spend more time in his classroom. People began to titter when I would dart up to his room after the final bell because I forgot something or needed clarification on some point or whatever. Here's what did it. Once I was telling him about the movie Noah, which I'd seen the night before with my dad, and I was noting that the trailers before the movie were a consistent mix of religious movies, like God's Not Dead, maybe, and action movies, I don't remember, to cover all the target audiences who would come to see Noah. He laughed a little and then told me that he would have noticed that too, that I thought like him and that the notion made him happy. I was so attached to him that summer, and moving away to college made me panic. Drunkenness and panic don't mix well, I think, so here's a sequence of how the first summer went down. I was at a party at Dylan Pigman's house early in June and I met a girl named Sadie Henderson. She told me in a casual conversation that she worked at the Stock Farm, a swanky country club in the mountains that Massey bartended for in the summers. And I said, "You know Massey?" I didn't say it, I slurred it. And I said, "I'm like in love with him." And 2 weeks later, I went to a party at Sadie Henderson's house, and she said, "I told Massey what you said about your little crush on him," apparently unaware of my horror, and he said that he always kind of figured. In July, I went to watch Little Women at my friend Tess's house. Tess lived in town across the street from Massey, and I knew this because it's a small town, and of course I did. And it was on my way home from work if I didn't take First Street anyway, so of course I knew. When I parked in front of Tess's house, Massey was building a fence in his yard to keep his young son from running into the street. When I left Tess's, he was still out working. He waved at me, shouted something that I swear sounded like Donkey Kong, and started running toward me. He was halfway across the street by the time I'd driven away, cursing Sadie Henderson. I immediately told my best friend Carissa, who also worked at the stock farm, and she told me she'd ask him about it. That night, when she showed up at the bonfire I was hosting, I was already drunk, and she told me that when she asked Messi about it, he slammed a glass down on the bar top and said, "Whatever she and I had is over," which is a weird thing to say. At 2 a.m, thunder woke me up. I could see from my window that the storm had blown the fire back to life in the little pit my friend Angelo had built, so I put on my robe and filled a pitcher of water to douse it. The lightning was very close, and for split seconds at a time, the world was perfectly lit. After soaking the wood again, I crawled back into bed and drafted an email to Massey apologizing for the incident earlier in the day. I don't know if I was still drunk. There were no typos. But my memory says that a bug flitted over the send button, and in flicking it off, I sent it at 2 a.m, but then again, maybe I was still drunk after all. In August, I sat on the steps of the massive hot spring warmed pool at Carissa's, 20 miles in the mountains, and she looked sort of like Jesus walking over the shallow layers of water as the pool refilled. "What do you want from him?" she asked. The canyon towering over her house carried the question east away. I wanted attention. I never once fantasized about him locking the doors of the classroom and taking me over a desk. I just wanted to be his favorite and to be special to him. We talked it out. She reminded me that I was just another student to him, one of many. In October, I began missing him. I was at college, and I innocuously sent him a short piece I read at my college's Lit Fest, 4 years ago. Our first contact since I sent him the late night email. He responded kindly. In January, I visited him over winter break, one of many of his former students to go visit him, and the terrible yearning began anew. Things I wrote from the days following included, "I cannot let him decide who I am and then follow through with it as if I were still his student," and how difficult it would be for him to dissect his own attachment to me, and it exists, believe. He would find parts of himself that shine like dull brass, antiquated and useless. His affection towards me bears no purpose. There is no end in time or ambition, but at least he doesn't yearn. The second summer, I came home the summer after my freshman year and delivered pizza. I hoped every single shift that I'd get a call to deliver on 3rd Street. The third summer, I swore that the summer after my sophomore year would be my last summer home. I played Last Dance with Mary Jane and drove with the windows down, letting the scent of the grass and heavy air come in. I loved that place. I was tired of it. I saw him once. I worked at a snow cone truck owned by my friend Riley's family in the parking lot of Safeway, across rusted railroad tracks from the baseball field my dad still coached at. It was July and it was raining, so I closed the truck. The game was called off shortly after. I was by the dugout waiting for my dad when I heard my name. Massey was on the other side of the fence, looking thinner. We talked for a while in the rain, which even as it was happening felt a little much. And I told him about an award I'd won recently, and he told me that he still hated Flannery O'Connor, so nothing much had changed. A baseball boy walked past and whistled. A few weeks later, my family and I went to my mom's friend Candy's house for her birthday dinner. She got huckleberry cheesecake because she heard it was my favorite, but we had to wait to start the meal until her boyfriend arrived, and his ride was late. It was a pleasant evening. The bugs were out, but the aspens in her yard fluttered and the breeze off the grass swirled gently in the creamy twilight. Her boyfriend looked familiar to me. He was much younger than Candy, around my mom's age, and his face had a pleasant shape, but his eyes were droopy and he had a budding gin blossom. I mentioned in passing that I may want to teach high school, and Jeff, the boyfriend, perked up, speaking more than he had all night. "My brother teaches English here." He had Massey's face. I asked Jeff how Massey was, and he shrugged. They were estranged. After Jeff's 4th DUI, honestly, rookie numbers in our town, Massey cut off contacts with him. Their houses were 2 streets apart. I rode my bike home and cried. My mom arrived soon after and asked me why. I sputtered for a moment because I didn't know. I still loved my mom when she left us and separated briefly from my father. I loved her when we exiled her, and when she came back, I still wanted her every day. Why couldn't Massey forgive his brother? How could he be so cold? I had known for a long time that Massey hated his life. I suspected it for the first time when he started writing a story for the class to collectively finish. It was some Western conceit, and it wasn't half bad. He spoke in private with me, bitterly, about a generation of students without spark. He wanted to move to London. He wanted to write. He wanted to get out of the valley. I hated him, suddenly, and for the first time, for not being better, and for cursing me to see the world through his eyes when he told me that we were alike, condemning me to his own mediocrity. I hated him for not being what I wanted him to be. My parents moved away from my high school town. My dad got a better coaching job, and I didn't tell Massey because why would I? He was just a teacher I had once, so high school. I think this is growing up. So while he DMs me on Twitter now, pressing on me his phone number and letting me know what parts of his day remind me of him, I stay silent, and I get further away.
I'm Brett. I'm a Carroll College senior. I'm in, yay! It's not actually my last year, but I am a senior, so. I am in the capstone class at Carroll, so I'm helping to put on the literary festival, and I introduced myself to Chelsea at the art walk on Friday, and I said that I was really happy that she was doing this reading of her own, and then she goes, oh, are you reading at it? And I said, no. And then I was like, I don't think any of us in the capstone class are. And then I got here, and then I felt bad, so now I'm reading. But also, fun fact, in case you wanted to know, I am only reading because I happened to have a packet of some of my poetry in my hand when I got here, because I need to read it for class tomorrow. And I realized that there's a lot of typos in here, such as I was counting the lines of poetry that I had written so that I could get to my word count, or my line count. And I had stopped after line 69, so I had written 69. I had written 69 next to a line, and I forgot to delete it, and then I submitted it, so my whole class can see that. And I didn't even actually make it to my 100 lines, so my professor's not going to be super thrilled, but that's okay. You just had some pretty funny pieces read, and I'm going to read a sad piece. So this is called The Shitty Things, and it's about my aunt who had breast cancer, and then she died of ALS when I was in high school. So I'm going to begin. How unfair is life? You would know better than most. A pain so small, an appointment and a call that sent tears streaming down your cheeks. And as you knelt on the ground and you looked to where you thought heaven should be, you begged God to tell you why. After all you had already been through, why this was the path for you. The road was rough. You would know better than most. Some pain, some tears, and many appointments, and a few years, until you understood he was simply testing your strength. And when you received the news and you hugged your daughters, you understood why. After all you had already been through, why this was the path for you. How unfair is life? You would know better than most. A trip, a fall, an appointment, and a call that left you numb. A sickness that would leave you numb, that would leave us all numb. A sickness that appointments and an organic diet couldn't fix. A 3-year death sentence, after all you had already been through. So little time, so much life. How unfair is life? The living who'd lost would know.
Greetings, my name is Sandy Oitzinger, and I've done this a few times now, and there is a character to every single one of these rojos, and the energy that is here tonight has literally blown me away. Thank you so much to all the previous readers. And Chelsea, I don't care what Bob and Linda say, you are 5-star, darling. You are 10-star. Thank you for what you do for our community. So I will start with my little presentation here now. This Rojo presentation requires stage setting and a cast of characters. Picture summer, a camper van, and an intrepid trio. The trio members are in order of enthusiasm: John Oitzinger, cast as Captain Lewis, me, cast as William Clark, Dante, the Papillon, cast as Seaman. For brevity, these three shall be hereinafter referenced as the Corps. The van in which the Corps sets out is called Bordeaux. Part 1, Cranbrook, BC, Canada. Bordeaux's perforated fuel line brought the Corps, dripping gas, to the campground to discover that none of our electronic devices work in Canada. I personally learned that if you listen long enough to Verizon Music, you can achieve a mystical state. Psychic communications in this state are clearer, and those of the diabetic canine were crystal. He pronounced telepathically his prescription dog food inedible, and that he intended to hold out either for Costco doggy chicken strips or veal piccata. Non-telepathic wireless in Canadian RV parks, incidentally, crawls so slowly as to go backwards. This reverse download antimatter is surely collecting within the cosmos as a massive high-velocity suction speed black hole. Captain Lewis rapidly depleted his lifetime allotment of patience dealing with the little tiny thing going counterclockwise as he worked to restore phone service online with the Verizon Muzak listener standing by. Part 2, trip data. Number of nights of actual if fitful slumber in the camper van, 3 of 7. Number of thunderstorms in Cranbrook before each morning, 4. Collective number of new hernias shared by the intrepid campers, 3. The amount of streamed video entertainment available to the Corps, 0. The amount of forced intimacy between the campers and their dog, infinite. Part 3, involuntary medical tourism. The Corps suddenly realized that our ruptured fuel line delay caused us to fall short of the number of Dante's insulin needles needed for the trip. The following events proved to remind one of former Montana Governor Brian Schweitzer. Brian Schweitzer goes rightfully apoplectic about how much U.S. elders continue to pay for prescription medicine. Getting additional insulin for Dante, who at age 14 in dog years is elderly in his own right, was mystifying. We learned Dante's vet in Montana could not write a prescription for insulin in Canada, and thus we needed to see a vet in Cranbrook. We managed this despite not having a working vehicle. Soon after, we were able to get to a pharmacy, prescription in hand, to pick up Humulin and insulin. The Canadian pharmacist then told us surprisingly that no prescription is needed for insulin in Canada. The cashier then rang up the script for a grand total of $26.95 in US dollars. The same bottle costs around $150 in Helena. The Corps now has very tender memories of Brian Schweitzer. Busing Montana senior citizens to Canada in 1999 to buy their meds was brilliant. Part 3, Canada versus Montana. Bordeaux returns to Montana, arriving in a town of 300 by 4 p.m. The luxury campground there is bucolic, but the Corps arrives just as the facility's wasp population awakens. The fume from the new fuel leakage, the deluge having been slightly reduced by the repairs in Cranbrook, do nothing to repel the wasps. The final night of the Corps adventure was graced with the following area features. A, the 4th of July celebration with attendant hullabaloo. B, the railroad train whistle. C, the on-site rooster who, although demoralized by the train whistle, was anything but a quitter. As the Corps sets the Garmin for true home, my daydreams revolve around a Joni Mitchell lyric, to wit, I drew a map of Canada, oh Canada, with your face sketched on it twice. The song still resonates. Canada is a seductive muse with her luscious forests, her stately creatures, and kind humans. Her resorts are well appointed and feature herbed spa facials and moisture whipped body wraps. The brunches at our particular resort were to die for, and I am not making this up. Our RV park had van-side food service. All this and Trudeau? The question arises then, why, at this stage in my life, might I not just live in Canada? A thought all the more pointed as I live in dread of more abysmal US midterm political outcomes. At the closure of the core adventure, I sang starry-eyed to myself, "Beautiful dreamer, wake unto me. Starlight and dewdrops are awaiting thee. Oh yes, in Canada." Though besotted, I acknowledge also waiting in Canada is slow-mo internet. Also, I fear, is an occult power that will open up and suck one through a one-way portal into the campground reverse download black hole. So too are Canadian winters, and so too is metric. Be still, my vacation heart, I eventually conclude. True home outdoes true north every time.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chloe. I graduated from Carroll in May 2017 in English writing and literature. Since then, I've been doing random and nameless things. But a few months ago, I wrote something that isn't particularly poetic or creative, but I think is one of the most personal things I've ever written, so I'll share that with you tonight. I drink alone. I go to breweries alone. I go to wine bars alone. I go to distilleries alone. At this very moment, I am sipping on savory, bitter rye ale from 10 Mile Creek Brewery. I am soaking in the soulful, Beatlesque music of a local band called Coffee Can Stash. And I am the only one sitting at this isolated table in the corner of the brewery. There is a woman here who reminds me of me. She is wearing a red sweater, navy sweatpants, baby blue socks, and sandals with brown straps. She is swaying in and out of the wine barrels, rhythmically circling the nonplussed couples who are seated at them. She is tall, slim, gray-haired, big-handed, and probably approaching her 70th year. She speaks to the other customers without looking at them, only to comment on how excellent the band is. I drink alone. This takes me back to college when I would wander into an empty dining hall at 3 in the afternoon. The stack would be closing in an hour to prepare for dinner, and the massive wooden room is empty except for a few like-minded straddlers. There was no hot food, but there was hazelnut coffee. There was a woman there who reminded me of me. She would sit at one of the long tables in front of the cereal and dessert bars, eating her lunch in total silence. I had an unobstructed view of the back of her head, which displayed mousy brown hair pulled back into a disheveled, low ponytail. She wore it over a silk graphic tee and skinny jeans, which she struggled to pull up over her heavy frame. She would smile at me as she passed my table by the window. I returned to smile, before drifting my eyes back to the falling snow just a couple of feet to my left. I drink alone. Even when I'm on the go, I always make sure my Subaru Forester's cup holders are filled with one hot and one cold beverage. I was driving through South Dakota's rolling back Badlands in the summer of 2014 when my gas tank light blinked orange. I went inside to grab 16 ounces of mint-flavored green tea and a bottle of pineapple coconut sparkling ice water. There was a woman there who reminded me of me. She leaned against the wall in front of the showers with a bundle of towels and clothes pressed to her chest. Her oversized plaid button-up and baggy jeans seemed to swallow her barely 5-foot, stocky, sunburnt body. Her glazed, yet serene eyes were fixed on the corner of the wall. She didn't flinch as I attempted to make eye contact and walked past her to the register. Got back in my car and merged back onto I-90 East and sipped on my crisp ice drink. I watched my speedometer inch towards 89 miles an hour and thought about the woman's dirt-smudged arms and face. I wondered where she had been, where she was en route,
and how long it had been since her last pilot shower. I drink alone. It is my absolute favorite pastime.